Hello and welcome. My name is Jim Betancourt, and I'm the host for another amazing edition of the Umpires in Black and White podcast. We will let you see a side of umpiring that is seldom discussed or appreciated from behind the mask. Without further delay, let's get this episode started. Today we're going to go behind the mask with our special guest from Sacramento, California, Mr. Marc Schneider. Marc will be sharing his stories of being a multi-level, well-traveled baseball and softball umpire, including his journey of becoming a Little League Western Regional umpire. Marc, welcome. Hello, Marc. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Yourself, Jim?
Doing excellent. We were discussing earlier your activity with Little League, and I know you've been active as a Little League umpire for many years, and you worked in that with that program. Tell me a little bit about that activity when you started and how you got involved.
Well, I started umpiring 13 years ago because my son was playing and my brother was already an umpire for about 10 years at that point. And he got tired of me asking questions and he said, "It's time for you to come learn." So that began my journey as not only a coach for my son in Little League, but also as an umpire. And it expanded to high school and adult baseball, and over the years I've started umpiring softball as well, but Little League was definitely my beginning.
Like so many umpires, we find ourselves beginning at Little League, and it's such a really good learning teaching components and the basics of umpiring. Did you go to any camps connected with Little League?
Yeah, I've actually been to several camps. I did the Western Region Little League week-long clinic. I've been to an umpire train the trainer for umpires in chief with Little League. I've done several weekend outreach clinics as both a student and an instructor over the past 13 years. Little League has a great foundation and great teaching, as well as the high school training that we get every year. I think we're always learning and always training.
Absolutely. I think that it's something that I didn't know that you actually attended Western Regional, their camp they hold down there in Southern California. I actually attended that camp myself, and 7 days of it's hell, actually, because there you are as a new official, not really knowing the basic. You barely know the basics, and they really test your mettle. And it's a great camp and teaches the fundamentals very, very well. I left there. Really, that was my first understanding of how little I knew about the rules of baseball.
I attended the week-long in the fall of 2019, and that year I submitted my paperwork to request a regional assignment, and I got it that December and was invited to do the 2020 Western Region Little League tournament. And I think without that training, I would have never gotten that invitation. I wouldn't have been qualified prior to that. Unfortunately, COVID got in the way, and it pushed it out until 2022. But, the training goes on, and we continue to grow and learn, and that's what we do as umpires.
And I think that component, unfortunately for some umpires, they never get that connection to the ground level of the basics of umpiring. And that causes a lot of problems down the road as they continue to umpire, I believe, because if you don't have the fundamentals, you have a good chance of learning things that aren't necessarily correct or the best way to go.
I can agree with that. Having been to the Western Region Little League training and to 13 years of our local high school association training, we have some of the best in California, if not the country. And it gives us a great opportunity to just grow every year and to learn every year and perfect our craft.
Absolutely. And we discussed earlier that previous show that we do so much more as umpires than just go out on that field and umpire. And your connection with Little League and I know you've also, as you said, you've trained at camps younger officials and helped them learn the craft. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
As an umpire with Little League in Sacramento, I have been afforded the opportunity to train hundreds of junior high and high school age kids how to get started like we do so often late as adults. And these are, not just young men but young women that are ready to go out and umpire a game with the basic knowledge that we can give them in a day or a weekend, and to train junior umpires as well as adult volunteers that want to get back to the game like we all get started.
That is just fantastic. It is something with as umpires the numbers have depleted over the years. It's so critical that we build a younger core of umpires to come up and help fill the ranks. Because for some reason, I think I'm getting older.
We all are every year, and when I started doing this 13 years ago, they told us, the average age of the umpire is 50 plus. And I was fortunate to start, at the end of my 30s, but now in that amount of time, I've reached that 50-year-old benchmark.
Right?
And we're all getting older, and if we can get this younger generation, in the gear and behind the plate or on the bases and calling games as, amateur umpires for amateur players, they have such a great foundation to continue and to grow with the sport even long after their playing days have passed behind them.
Absolutely. And I think that offers a lot of our ex-players an opportunity to feel like we're still part of the game. And that's a big component as well. So, Marc, I applaud your efforts for helping keeping this brotherhood growing and young people bringing them in, and also the older fellas. So anyway, thanks, Marc. I really appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Marc, we left off talking about Little League, and then you next stage up, moving up the levels, you went to high school, correct?
Yeah. I've done high school baseball for the last 13 years. This will be my 13th season. And Jim, I met you about 9.5 years ago, and we were able to, take your baseball rules knowledge and what I was able to offer at the time, and we had one of our very first connections helping instruct a rules clinic.
That's right. The cobwebs are coming loose, and 9 years, hard to believe that it's been that long, Marc. And there we were down on the stage, and we had a room full of about 40 or 50 umpires looking at us like, what the hell do these guys know, and why are they talking to us?
And so many of those guys had years experience on top of me, and several of them had less years under me. But I think the fastest way we learn is by teaching.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that it opens your eyes to the what ifs or what we don't know. Because in those classes, everybody wants to tell you what they know. And when they fixate on when the umpire fixates on what he knows and sticks a hard line to that, he doesn't allow himself new information. more knowledge to come in and get better and improve. And I think that's a key for every umpire, is to not get so rigid, no matter if you're a 40-year veteran or 4 days umpiring. You have to be receptive to rule information, and maybe a perception that you have of a rule that you thought was one thing could be completely incorrect. And uh, umpires have a tendency, they're not the easiest to change their minds.
We're all very type A personality as a generalization, but we get that way. In the 13 years that I've done this, umpiring has evolved many times. What we're taught and how we're supposed to be and where we're supposed to be. But the one constant is our rules, and learning them and interpreting them sometimes causes debate, but at the same time it's one of our constants.
Yes, absolutely. It's something that the rule book's there, although some of the language and the way it's worded, and sometimes even just finding a rule is difficult. It still has the basics, the ground level of what the rule is and how it should be interpreted. And when it when we as umpires have a tendency at times, because it is worded poorly, we'll interject our own opinions of what that rule language says, and that's where we get into problems.
Yeah, I can agree where it's caused problems, but I also have, a philosophy of umpiring with the spirit of the rule. Why was it written? Why are we out there doing what we do? And if we can use those rules to guide us and to direct us in our games, and use that terminology and our experience as well as that, it just makes things so much easier to do when we're on the field.
Right. And then I was thinking today about the coaches that come out after an infraction takes place and you made a ruling, and they come out and they'll have a big dialogue of what took place on the field and what did. And at some point, often I interject and ask, Coach, is there a question here? Do you have a question for me? And they look, then they stop what they're in the middle of what they're saying, and they almost look like, no, I don't. But then they make up a question or they say something. But anyway, that's a good way to interject with coaches as umpires when they do come out. Coach, do you have a question for me? Is there a question here? And that just gets it right back to, guess what? It's either a rule question or he needs to go back to the dugout.
Right, because he may be sticking up for his team, and he may be coming out to show that he's doing his job, and we can all appreciate that. These coaches have a hard job, especially with these student athletes and with
Oh,
everything that they do. We know their job is hard enough, and if we're well versed in what we're talking about and we're knowledgeable with our rules, a lot of times our responses to those help guide that coach or help them articulate, why are they out there to talk to us? And it makes our job easier and their job easier at the same time.
absolutely. In fact, along those lines, I had a coach come out. I made a call, don't remember what it was. He came out on the field and he says, Hey, Jim, he says, Hey, I got to act like I'm asking you a question about that ruling you just made, because that's what my fans and the players expect. I said, oh, okay, thank you very much. And then he walked back to the dugout. So it's just basically, they're out there sometimes just to let the fans know that they are making a statement and sticking up for their team. Hey, Mark, so talking about problems and issues with coaches or players or whatever in high school baseball, uh, I don't honestly, I don't think there's another league that holds a candle to problems and issues. And I'm referring to the adult league uh, baseball. And you've umpired that with me as well. So you want to share your experiences a little bit there?
Yeah, adult baseball has so many great benefits to it as an umpire. The game sometimes goes a little slower. Sometimes it's still very, very competitive. But I found it's a great training ground. It allowed me to slow down as an umpire during, some of the 45 and 50-year-old men's games where it gave me a great place to work on things. I was able to pick something that night where tonight I'm going to do these two things really, really well. While doing everything else that we're supposed to do out there. And there were other nights where it was very, very competitive when you have just the over 18-year-old men and they're playing at still a pretty high level, but they also feel like they have a voice to say things that we don't always allow on a field as umpires who, we always want to be in control of our games, but not always in charge of our games. We don't want to come off as controlling or I'm the boss out here, because these guys work hard and they pay to play, and we want to give them a fair and great called game as well. They deserve that.
Absolutely. And to their credit as well, they're just, even the 70-year-old men out there playing fast pitch hardball, baseball. It's just incredible that they're out there performing 9 innings, playing a 9-inning game and being competitive. But then you add the component in the adult league of the, as you said, 20-year-olds out of college, 20 to 30-year-olds coming out onto the field, and you get behind the plate and they're bringing it in the mid 80s and low 90s, pitches coming in, nasty sliders. It's intense. And for an umpire, that also builds your confidence, your ability to call pitches. And it is just a great training ground. I agree.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that I learned was this is a great place to hone your craft. This, if there's something that you're working on today or this week or this month that you've picked to be better at, it was a great place to go do that. Because, I mean, like Little League at the beginning, you have to expect the unexpected. And if you do, and as you do adult baseball later, their skill level goes up and heightens, and then eventually it tapers off, and you still have to expect the unexpected. And it keeps us as umpires on our toes.
Absolutely, it does. Well, I think that is a really nice way to, we'll take a nice little short break, and when we come back, Marc's going to share with us his time that now he's being more active umpiring softball. And that's my origins in the game of baseball. I remember watching my dad play fast pitch softball some 60, long time ago.
Before you exit that, my dad also played fast pitch softball when I was a very young kid. And I grew up on the field and around the field watching my father play, a sport that doesn't always get a lot of recognition for men. But if I was a young man in the spring and in the summer, in between probably 3 and 8 years old, I watched my dad play fast pitch softball.
It's just wonderful times. I remember playing with other kids, playing, getting into a rundown, and while my dad's on the field playing, it's just memories that are just incredible. All right, guys, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back. I'm here today with Marc Schneider. We're talking about Marc behind the mask, his career in umpiring baseball, softball, uh, and we're having a really good discussion. We just left off on the last section talking about actually softball, and Marc's a softball umpire, and I've umpired softball as well. Uh, and then Marc, you were talking about your dad playing softball and you being there as a young man, a young kid watching him play on the field.
Yeah, my dad played fast pitch softball on a local league in Idaho when I was a child. And he also was my very first coach as a little league player back in the 80s, and it was very big for men to play softball back then, and fast pitch softball. It was unique to that area where I grew up, and I spent so much time at a field. I have a brother that's a year older than I am, and he's also an umpire. And we spent so much time around the sport that I think it was ingrained into us as very young children. My dad played Legion ball, and he uh, he grew up playing the game and played it at a very high level for a long time, and it was just part of who we were as kids growing up, and now as adults to be part of the game still. In my 50s, from the time I was a very, very young child, I feel very blessed.
So let me ask you that you said it was in Idaho. Was that like a rural area, a small rural area?
I was just outside of the Boise area, and at the time, I think the town had about 40 to 50,000 people, and we traveled. We went to Utah, we went to Eastern Idaho, we went to tournaments at different times, but I also have very fond memories of a couple of very specific parks that I grew up at. And if I wasn't off, chasing a foul ball for a piece of bubble gum from, the stands bringing it back, then my brother and I were also just across the street playing our own games and doing those things with the other kids that we grew up with, emulating our
And I,
fathers playing this game.
unfortunately, that's kind of lost today on today's society. That connection of the youth and their parents participating in something together. I had the same experience, fortunately, with my dad. He pitched, actually played softball with his two brothers competitively. It's similar, this just like you described. And I remember uh, a bleacher, a wooden fence, wooden bleachers, big wooden bleachers, look like something right out of 1920s. You think Babe Ruth was going to walk onto the field, and he's out there playing baseball, softball on that field. And it was called Ajax Stadium. It's located in Willows. It's since burned down, but those are the memories that are they're just ingrained in your who you're being and who you are. And I actually was fortunate enough to play in the last game my dad pitched. He was 57 and he pitched a complete 7-inning game of softball. He didn't win. We didn't win the game, but I played with him while he was pitching. And again, that's something that just goes into your heart and soul.
I think my dad's the end of his career was very similar with the game, and I think a late teenager at the time and got to go to a couple of practices with him and be out on the field with my dad, just a couple of times before life changes and he moved on to other interests and other things. But that core memory and that core part of the smell of a glove and the pop of a ball and those things started at a very young age, and then they continued to where I was coaching my children, and then because of that experience I became an umpire, and I will stay around the game forever as long as I'm able to because of it.
I appreciate that. And one thing I wanted to note, my umpiring softball began while I was a player, and I didn't have a clue about a rule or make a ruling. I was out there basically getting paid to just call safe and out, and that was my first experience as an umpire. Actually, was when I was about, I would say I was either 18 or 20, just young enough and stupid enough to go out there and do it for a $7 game fee, and that was where I began. But you tell me about your start with softball umpire.
Well, about 2.5 years ago, I had a close umpire friend reach out to me for a Labor Day tournament that the company he was working for was putting on, and it was in support of some military people, and the reason that he ran this particular tournament in September, and they were short umpires, and he asked me if I was willing to come out and help them out because they needed the extra help, and I'd done baseball for almost 11 years at that point, 11 and a half years, and I wasn't too sure about doing softball. It was a different sport than the baseball game that we're, you know, trained and ready for, but he said, "I just need help. You can do this." And I went out and I did my first weekend of softball, and I was hooked. The girls play at such a different pace and a different level, and they had such a great time that tournament that I was asked to come back a couple of weeks later, and I did. It was like, yeah, I think I could like this, and this could be a lot of fun too. Baseball and softball are so much the same, but so very different. And in 2.5 years, I became the umpire in chief for this local travel ball company, and I've grown with it and enjoyed the family so much, and the kids so much, and their approach to the game. You know, it doesn't matter if it's boys and girls playing softball, or girls playing softball, or boys playing baseball. When we get out there, I can't tell you the joy and the experiences that I've had with these kids on the field.
The game gives us so much back to us as well. It's something that I think it's overlooked. What we get out of it is just goes well beyond being monetary. It's something that it's the connections with the people, the friendships, the players, the bonds, and it's a lot of good things come from that. And it's something that is and it's always a challenge. It's no different. That's the one thing they have, baseball and softball have in common. It is competitive, and it will be competitive. And you have to, when you walk on the field to umpire either one of those games, you better be ready to call the game, because there will be things that come up and will catch you by surprise. What's been your experience of the one say a couple of things that have caught you by surprise in either softball or baseball?
That's what we truly train for, is not the balls and the strikes, and the safe and the out and the fair and foul. We always train for that unexpected. And that's what we prepare for year after year after year. And Jim, I can't tell you how many times this game has surprised me. Yeah, whether it's a bizarre play or a coach asking a question that makes you really stop and second guess, did I do this right? But we spend so many hours training that eventually it becomes ingrained in us that we just know. Monday night I did a high school baseball game, and we had a ball lodged under the padding at the backstop. And I was on the bases, and my partner didn't quite catch it. And afterwards, we had a coach come out and say, "Isn't this the rule? Shouldn't they get these bases?" And my partner and I got together and we talked about it, and it really made you stop and think. Okay, what are our base awards? Where was the runner? What were we doing? What did we see? And where do we put them? And eventually, we moved a runner from a walk to extra bases because that ball was stuck and lodged. He was all the way at third. And after my partner and I got together, we decided, no, he really should be back at first base because it was a pitch lodged ball. And then the other opposing coach came out and wasn't exactly happy, but we walked over and we talked to him. And we had a conversation with him and let him speak his mind. And ultimately, we got the call right, but it really makes you work and think and trust your training.
Right. And every component that you just described is part of that training. You got together, you talked about what happened, what the ruling was on the field at the time, and then you corrected the course. You explained it to the coaches. All that is part of the process of how we get the important component. Did we get the call right? Did we get the call right?
Absolutely. And sometimes when we're wrong, we have to really stop and listen to what these coaches also say to us, because they make us really process what we've learned and what we've trained for. And one of the things that I preach to my umpires, especially in the travel softball that I do, is we're never going to be bigger than this game. You know, we always need to be approachable. We always need to hear, what these coaches have to say, because, they hold us accountable. They definitely do. And it's such an unforgiving occupation that we have as umpires. So often they're quick to criticize, but we spend so much time training to master our craft and to know what we're doing out there, so that we give these players, the most fair and honest assessment of what we're doing for them.
Absolutely, Mark. I really well said. And I'll tell you what, brother, I really enjoyed this interview going behind the mask with Marc Schneider. You are an awesome umpire. You're an awesome person. Really have enjoyed working baseball games with you. And you have any closing remarks you want to add?
No, Jim, I'm just, grateful for this opportunity, and I hope that you and I can do this again soon. I had a great time tonight with you, and to be able to speak with you, in a more formal setting, as well as our conversations that we've had personally over the years. You've made me a better umpire. You've made me think about things and made me work harder, to know not just the rules of the game, but be able to articulate them to coaches using the terminology, but also the simple words that baseball rules in black and white gave us that, helped us be able to explain to coaches when they can't quite grasp the rules, from the book standpoint.
Thank you, Mark. Very kind words. And I feel the same way. What you've done for me as a umpire as well, person. You're a stand-up guy, and I've really been a pleasure knowing you. And something about what you just said about articulating the rules in a simple way, so that even I make a joke that even the umpires can understand it. But in reality, I was watching a training video today about catcher's interference, and the guy putting on the video was reading the rule, and it was probably a paragraph that was probably 10 sentences long. It was thick, lots of words, run-on sentences, and after he got done finished reading it, I could hardly process what he said. So guess what he does? He says, and then basically just what it's saying is that the runners, if they have to advance, if they're forced to advance, they just go to the next base, and the batter who was interfered with, he gets first base. Something like, it was just a 3-sentence word, or 2 sentences and 10 words. And he stated it in simple language. And so that's kind of made me think about the baseball rules in black and white app. That's the whole concept of why we did it, because I mean, all that fancy rule book language and lots of words, if you can't retain that information, or you can't just get it down to a a nugget of what it says, it doesn't do much good. But again,
Well, Jim, in the 9.5 years since I started with baseball rules in black and white and our friendship, I can't tell you how many times it's helped me, to open your app or to open your book when I had a paper copy of it, and to just review, some of those more difficult rules that we deal with prior to a game, and be able to just skim through it and go, okay, I do have this down, and I do understand it the way it was written in a sometimes overcomplicated wording in a rule, and have that available to me. Though that resource has been great.
well, thank you very much. And just another perfect example of what you're talking about, base awards, what you just discussed earlier. The ball got lodged, getting the correct base award, and you got it right because you took the time to read that information and make it stick in your head, and to where you were able to pull it up when you needed it. And that's another key to just get the play right.
Yes, and that's what we always want as umpires. We want to put our egos aside, and we don't want to just be right for the sake of being right. We do it for the
Yep.
players. We do it for the coaches, and even for the fans that don't understand it and may holler at us, for making the correct ruling, and having the integrity to set those things aside, and make sure that no matter what we do what's right by the players.
Right. Next time you're on, we're going to bring that topic up, the fans and dealing with the people who aren't happy. And we'll definitely discuss that. But I want to close with a tip, because it is the beginning of our baseball season for newer umpires and even older umpires. Guy was on Facebook today, typed in, hey, I made a call for third base. I watched the feed. I heard the glove pop. I made a call. You got any advice? And what I said to him was, I said, timing. I said, there's no reason to rush your call when you make your call. You got all the time in the world. Review it in your head, replay it, what you saw, then make your call. Doesn't matter safe or out, doesn't matter ball or strike behind the plate. 99% of the time I see calls missed behind the plate. Excuse me, even at the upper levels, they have made a really quick call. Instead of letting that ball hit and then wait, come up with the strike call. Right! That allows you time to process, and it also will allow you, when you pause, that ball comes in, hits the glove, pop, and if it's a really close pitch, and you're looking at where it hit, sometimes guess what the batter does? He will tell you what the pitch was. The catcher will tell you what the pitch was. It'll really be helpful just to wait and slow down your call. And that's my tip for tonight. And then Mark, you want to add a tip for everybody out there listening?
It's early in the year. As umpires, I would say protect your body. Be warm on a cold day, so you're not thinking about the cold, and you're focused on the game. Best thing I've done in 13 years was buy a good pair of socks to keep my feet warm, so I'm not thinking about cold feet or cold hands and having the right gloves on. And in the summertime, it's just the opposite. We have to be drinking water, and we have to be hydrating and preparing for those things, so that when we're on the field, we're not focused on the weather. We're focused on the game.
That's outstanding advice, Mark. Hey, it's been wonderful having you here tonight, and I look forward to the next time you're on the show. Have a great 2026 season. I'll try to do the same, and thank you again for being here, Mark.
Thanks, Jim. Can't wait to talk to you again.
This podcast is brought to you by the #1 rated Baseball Rules in Black and White app. It's the only Baseball Rules app with videos, multiple rule sets, simplified rule language, and the best part, it's extremely affordable. Download it today or learn more at baseballrulesinblackandwhite.com. That wraps up another fun-filled edition of the Umpires in Black and White podcast. You can watch or share this amazing episode again on our Baseball Rules in Black and White YouTube channel, or go to baseballrulesinblackandwhite.com. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.